Hello YouTube, welcome back. I'm getting ready to start on my next project. One thing I kind of want to have in my cemetery is kind of like a watchman, caretaker kind of thing. So I want to have a figure that's kind of standing somewhere in the cemetery that's holding a shovel and holding a lantern. But I want to animate this prop also. So what my plan is I want to have it to where the head and the arm that's holding the lantern is going to move back and forth. Kind of like he's looking back and forth, and that kind of stuff. And obviously I kind of already have it in my mind how I'm going to do the linkages and that kind of stuff. But when you're trying to do multiple functions on something and trying to use one motor, so this way everything stays in sync with each other, sometimes it becomes a real trial and error kind of thing because one way might work, but then something about it might not work with it and that kind of stuff. So it's definitely going to be a little bit of a challenge to get exactly what I'm looking for, but I don't think it's going to be too major. So I hope you guys enjoy this video, and let's get started. Now for this project, I'm going to be using pretty much all steel, just because I'm better with work with steel, welding it, and doing what I need to do. So this is just a bunch of random pieces of pipe that came from an old trampoline that a buddy of mine was tearing down. And everybody that knows me, they know that I like scrap metal because I use it for all kinds of projects. So he asked me if I wanted it all. I was like, yep. So he dropped it all off. So a lot of this is from an old trampoline, and this is what I'm hoping to use to make this particular prop. Okay, this is step one. It's always best to try to find a set of clothing. Just go to like any consignment store or something like that, and just find just whatever clothing that you kind of want for the look for what you're going with. I picked up a pair of black pants, and just a couple different jackets. Nothing super special. The reason I say this is kind of step one is it's always easier to make your armature fit the clothing than it is to try to find clothing to fit your armature after the fact. Not to mention, you also want to make sure you don't build something that by the time you put something on there, then it doesn't want to work properly because it's either binding up or it's too tight or it doesn't fit the shoulder width or something like that. So it's always best to build your armature to fit the clothing, not try to find clothing to fit after the fact. So step one is done. Step two is to start making some measurements and start working on the armature. All right, to kind of show where I'm at the moment is I have a couple pieces of pipe here. One of them has, hopefully you see it good in the camera, has a nice little bend here, which I figure is going to be good for the knee area. And then I have another one that has a nice little arch to it. And the reason I put these together in this particular fashion is I'm kind of figuring, obviously, if you see somebody holding a lantern, they're not standing like they're at attention kind of thing. They're not like standing upright, they're kind of crouched over a little bit. They kind of lean in because they're trying to see what's in front of them kind of thing. So they're kind of hunched over a little bit. So that's why I wanted to have like this nice little arch here, which I think is going to be really good. And then obviously each one of them have this little bung on them. So I'll be able to put a piece of pipe between the two. That's what's going to keep them from twisting. And then you can see I built these little feet here, and this was going to allow it to go right inside here to essentially hold my prop up. Now I haven't fully anchored this down. The reason why is because I might be pushing this forward. I might be bending this a little bit more to determine my angle that I want, and then I'll weld a L bracket, like a regular L bracket back here, so I can put an extra bolt, and that's what's going to keep my angle where I want it. Now where I got these from is on that curve pipe. You see they got these pieces on here. There's one on either end. Now the piece that I cut off, the drop piece, you see it was originally right here. I just cut it off so I could put a bolt in here and it slides right in. Okay, I made it to this point right here. You can see I originally started welding this arm on. You can see where, but then I cut it off. And the reason I cut it off is because I realized I'm going to have a lot of trouble putting the jacket on if that arm is that long. So my game plan is After I get the jacket on, I'll be able to just slide this in place and then put a screw in there. That's why I have like the little reference point so I can get it back in the same spot. And then if I ever take the jacket off, then I'll slide the sleeve up, pull the screw out, pull this off, and that'll allow me to get the jacket off. You see I got the arm on here. I got it on a hinge so it can rotate back and forth. I got the hinge obviously set vertically at a 90 to the floor. That's so the arm has a nice natural swing. Now it does look like it's sitting kind of high at the moment, but the whole concept of that is a lot of times, when you think about, when you see people holding lanterns and they got their arm up and their hands kind of down like this, usually the hand is almost at their sight line, and then the lantern is kind of down this way a little bit. So it's kind of my idea here is once the head's on here, the eyes are probably going to be somewhere in this area right here. You see the hand is going to be just below the sight line, and then it's obviously going to go down like that. So this way it kind of gives it a more natural kind of look to it. But I'm kind of at a stopping point today. I'm going to go ahead and pick up again tomorrow. Tomorrow will be putting a vertical rod here for the head to be attached to. I'll figure out how I want to mount my motor, how I'm going to run my linkages from the motor to that pipe, and then from that pipe to the arm, so they both move back and forth at the same time, and to figure out how I'm going to put the clothes on there to kind of, fill them out to make them look like they're actually around a waist and a chest and stuff like that. So we'll continue on this tomorrow. All right, so what I'm doing for the neck is I just drilled a hole in here big enough for a pipe to go through here. You see I got a 3/8 bolt coming up from the bottom. I got to put a nut on there so it's kind of locked in place. I got the washer on here. So I'm using one of those sleeves. It's for like concrete work, where you drill a hole in the concrete. This with a bolt goes inside there, and as you tighten the nut up, this right here flares out, and that's what locks onto the concrete. I'm using this just as a sleeve, essentially, just something to take up space. So I'll have that on there, and then I have my pipe itself. That's going to go down through here and just slide right over top of that right there. And what that's going to do is that's going to give me a nice free back and forth movement, for the neck. And then the next step will be to, hopefully the arm's not really in the way of the camera, is to run a tab out right here and link it right here. So this way, as this moves back and forth, they'll go like this back and forth together. And then I will work on figuring out where I'm going to mount the motor. All right, I tossed the jacket on here. Seems to be moving pretty good. Doesn't seem to be having any kind of real restrictions. Kind of show where I'm at the moment with the linkage. This has definitely been a bit of a trial and error, kind of situation, just because of the nature of the arm and the way I have everything kind of put on there. I put the link right here, the little tab, because I was trying to get it as far away from way out here as possible, because obviously I got the jacket going on there and I'm trying to keep everything kind of confined. But what was happening is once this gets to a certain point, it's no longer pushing this direction no more, because it's kind of getting to the point where it's kind of starting to go backwards this way. So just having a link go straight from here to here and then hooking the motor up to here somehow wasn't working, because I was getting like almost like a binding, where once this moved all the way over, if I tried to grab this and turn it this way, I wasn't getting no push here. So I realized that I'm going to have to do all my pulling and pushing from here with the arm, and then just let this float with it, which is going to be the easiest. And then what I had to do to counteract that portion where I lose the pulling portion of it is, you see I mounted the motor back here and had the link coming this direction. So this way it's counteracting the part where it kind of gets that dead spot and allowing me to still have the arm move back and forth. So that's why the motor's back here. And then for the motor, I just took a piece of pipe, I cut it down the middle, cut it about halfway around, both sides, and then welded a nut on here and then a larger one right here so this spins freely through here. And I just clamped this down, that's what holds the motor. And I left a little bit extra right here so I can weld to this bracket right here. Right now I just have it clamped because I'm just giving you some test runs and see how everything's working, make sure I don't got no binding or anything like that. And then the linkage that I had to put up here, you can see where it's kind of bent. The reason I had to do that was because once it starts hitting that dead spot, at least by having this going this way, it's still giving myself that last little bit of pull that I need in order to continue making the neck move back and forth. You see I got a little reference line here showing the movement of it. And I still got a little more this way than this way, but it's not too bad. You can see how far it moves over. So there's definitely a trial and error, but I do got the linkage working pretty good. The next is to put the jacket on just to see how it works with the jacket on there. And if everything looks like it's going to be fine, then I'll start doing all the ribs, the metal stuff to try to, float it out and make it look like it's supposed to. All right, I tossed the jacket on here. Seems to be moving pretty good. Doesn't seem to be having any kind of real restrictions. You see the motor's actually working pretty good. It's not doing anything where it's kind of reversing directions. And obviously once I put the wire on here to push the jacket away from everything, and then I'm going to cut this excess off, and then when all the wire goes on and I put the white shirt on here, or a strip of a white to make it look like a shirt, that'll cover all this right here. So now that I know it looks like it's working pretty good, I can continue moving forward with making the clothes fit better now. Okay, I got the wires all in, and then what it is, I wrapped a bunch of masking tape around it just to kind of help conceal the wires. And then on the front here, I took a thin piece of cardboard, like from a cereal box, and put that on the front here. So this way, when the shirt goes on, it helps make sure you don't see all the individual ribs from the wires and stuff like that. So it gives it much more of a natural kind of, chest look to it. I went ahead and I stuck the styrofoam head on there and just zip tied a lantern to it for the moment. So you can kind of see what I got going on here. But the next step is to start, figuring out if I'm going to do the full shirt or just cut it to where I can just kind of have it in this area and then do the jacket, or if just putting the shirt on there looks a little bit better than doing the jacket. I'll have to try to make that decision very shortly here, and then hopefully I can get this finished up. Okay, to kind of show how I kind of make the hands, especially when it's kind of something that I want to make sure that I can pose the hands, like make it look like it's grabbing something or, pointing or something like that. What I do is I'll take just a cheap pair of gloves. I don't know if I'm going to use these ones specifically. These are just some ones I had. And what I'll do is I'll trace out my hand. And then what I'll do is I have a roll of this. I picked it up at Home Depot. It's baling wire, or it could be even, I think I found this in the fencing section. I think it's for fencing, where it kind of runs along the top of like cow fencing and stuff like that to help keep it from, sagging. It's like eighth of an inch. It's pretty strong. And then what I do is, after I trace out my hand, I'll make lines dead center. And you see, I'll put them all on here. I'll make sure that they all meet at the bottom here. I'll tack weld all these together right here. Then I'll finish tweaking the bending of them to get them where I want them. And then I'll take another piece and I'll put it across the knuckle area. What that is, that's representing like this part. So when I go to bend the fingers, they're all fixed together right here. So I get a more natural looking bend when I actually, go to wrap it around something. And then what I'll usually do to kind of make it look like, the fingers, once it's inside the gloves, I'll usually just take either a piece of rubber tubing, fuel line or something like that, or maybe even like loom, that stuff you wrap around wires, and I'll slide those over the fingers prior to putting it inside the glove. And what that'll do is that'll kind of beef them up a little bit, so when I bend them, they'll look a little more natural than just like a thin looking kind of wire behind a set of gloves. So I'm going to start off by getting all these tacked together, all that stuff, and I'll do some final tweaking of the angles that I need, and then I will get ready to start figuring out how I'm going to attach them to the actual armature. All right, I got the hands all welded up. I got some rubber tubing on the fingers. I went and picked up a set of like those kind of those leather, gardening gloves. Just something super cheap. Goes apart. Now, pretty much, I should be able to. I got to bend the thumb down a little bit. Now, these are a little bit of a pain to get in, because you're obviously you can't bend these like you normally would your normal fingers. You just gotta finesse them in there. They'll go. There we go. And I got a finger in each one. So now when I go to wrap it, I can, like I said, I'm going around the shovel. I can just take each one of these fingers and bend them like this, and make it to where they can look like it's wrapping right around a shovel, the lantern, whatever I'm going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and get the fingers in the other glove, and then get ready to figure out if I'm going to weld these to the actual prop or just find a way to put a screw through them. So if I ever have to pull the jacket off or something like that, it'd be easier to get it back off. So that'd be the next step, is figure out the attaching it and moving forward from there. All right. Well, the next thing I need to do is paint the face. I went ahead and already painted it, kind of a pale kind of color. I don't know what you want to call this color. Missed a little bit of black on it, kind of make them look a little on the dirty side. The next is going to be to paint like where the eyebrows are, do the eyes, paint the white, and then put a little black dot in the middle there. Outline where the mouth is, stuff like that to kind of give it a little bit of somewhat of facial features. All right, I figured I'd put some hair on it just to kind of, you know, give it a little more of a creepy kind of vibe to it. Put a little bit of facial hair on the front to kind of hopefully hide the lower portion of the neck where it's not fully hidden behind the shirt. I have an extra one of those Rapunzel dolls that I'll be using for future projects, so kind of robbing some hair from her because the hair doesn't need to be that long on that anyways. So I'm thinking about adding a little bit more to it. Looks a little thin in a couple spots, so I'm going to probably add just a pinch more to it, and then I'm going to put it on and see what it looks like. Okay, I would say he's about 95% done. I still got to find some shoes to put on him, paint that lower section black. I do have a few pieces of grass, plastic grass left over from that animated coffin that I did. I'm going to kind of glue those pieces in front of the shovel just to kind of hide the edge from the shovel to the wood. And then I'm going to wait till it gets dark, and I'm going to put some ambient light on him to try to see how he looks with it hopefully being dark and kind of creepy looking. But overall, it seems to be working pretty good. Every so often, because of the nature of those motors, every so often I notice it'll kind of do that reversing thing. I think, maybe something with the jacket. So I'm going to have to do some exploring to see if I can figure out what's kind of going on with that. But other than that, he seems to be working pretty good. Doing exactly what I wanted it to do. The arm and the head moving together, looking like he's looking back and forth. Alright, I guess I get to start all over again. These things happen. I was talking earlier in the video how I noticed that the motor was every so often would do its little reversing thing. Well, now it's doing it nonstop consistently. So I pulled everything off as far as like the jacket, anything that would create any kind of resistance, and it's still continuing to do it. And I also noticed that my linkage right there that's attached to the motor was jumping, but it's tight. So that tells me there's something wrong inside the motor. So I mean, it's an old one. I've had that motor for quite a few years. So I guess it finally just decided it's done. So I'm going to switch it out to one of these. I picked this up quite a while ago. I just haven't used it for anything yet. I have used these before in the past. They're a nice, strong little motor. The only downside is they're 12 volt. So that means I'm going to have to link it to the animated coffin and the lights within my system, but that's fine. I got a power supply. I got two of them that are 10 amp power supply, so it'll be more than enough power to run it. So I'm going to go ahead and start tearing it apart. I'm only going to tear apart what I need to tear apart to get in there and fix it. So let's get started. Okay, I'm in the middle of doing a little bit of back surgery here. I took these three ribs out. They just slide into the plywood, so I was able just to pull them up and get them out of my way. I got the motor out. I just got to cut this out now. I'm going to leave this in because I'm still going to use this as my bracket, but I'm going to go ahead and get this removed. I'm working on the mounting bracket for the other motor. The other motor is obviously attaches differently. This one has four little screws that hold it on. So I just took a piece of cardboard, put a big hole in the center so I could put it over top of it, put a little bit of paint around the place where the screws go to make reference points, and then just transferred that to a piece of steel. Just like that right there. So now I got my piece made, and I just got to cut it to the length that I want to cut it to. I don't want to cut it until I know for a fact how much I want to cut this off. Determines on exactly how I want it to sit inside the prop. And then the other thing I got to do is I got to build a new one of these because the shaft size, from this one, this right here to the other motor are different. This one's bigger than this one, so I'm going to have to make a whole new one of those to fit on here with another screw to hit that flat spot. So gonna keep on moving along. All right, I got it moving again. Show you the backside here where I got the motor. Now that I don't have that extra sitting up here that the other motor was hooked to, I had to cut this off and move this up. You see I got my little bracket mounted here that the screws into. I had to build a new one of these. It has a set screw on the top and then a screw on the backside around that flat spot to help keep it in line. And then you see where I also moved the one linkage further down the arm here. So this way it gives it a little bit more, pushing power, a little more leverage, just to hopefully make it to where the motor shouldn't stress too much. But I'm going to go ahead and put all the clothing and everything back on and give it another good test run and see how it works out. Okay, this is round 2 of letting it run. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just let this thing sit out here for the next couple hours and just run like this and see if I start having any issues. So let's give it a couple hours and see if we're good. All right, I actually went ahead and gave it 3 days of runtime. So what I did is, each night after work, I turned it on and let it run for about 3 to 4 hours each night for the last 3 nights. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to have any issues with it. So over the last few days, it's gotten about 10 to 12 hours worth of runtime, and I haven't had a single issue with it at all. It's been working great. The arm's been moving fine. The motor doesn't sound like it's having any issues or anything like that. So I think I can pretty much call this one ready to go. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and shut the lights out. Because what I want to do is I want to show you kind of what my game plan is as far as the ambient light, and stuff like that. Plus also what it kind of looks like in the dark. It definitely has a little bit of a creepy factor to it. So let's shut these lights out and show you what it looks like. All right, here we are in the dark. This is kind of my game plan. Is I plan on using a low wattage incandescent orange light bulb. I'll be narrowing the beam down. My concept of that, or the mindset, is I want to give it the illusion that the lantern is what's lighting them up and not, extra lighting around. Now, obviously, there's going to be lighting, kind of floating around, the cemetery display, all the extra ambient lights. So there'll be some extra light on them. But the main light that's lighting him up, like his face and stuff like that, I want to give it the look that the lantern is what's doing that, that effect, essentially. I do like the way I made it to where the head follows the hand. It kind of gives it a lot more realism that he's looking the direction that he's aiming his light. He wants to see what's in front of him, so he's actually looking that direction. I like that aspect of it. I do got to say the facial features I think came out pretty good. The eyes definitely have a little bit of a weird creepiness to him, when he turns his head and he looks at you, especially with the low lighting that it has on there. But I think that's just going to add that level of creepiness to the prop. So I look at that as being a bonus. That's a plus. But if you all enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.